What do you think is the creepiest, most disturbing unsolved mystery ever? I can't remember his name. But there was a case of a college-age young man, Brian I think is his first name, who was reported missing after a night out. There's security camera footage of him entering a bar, but absolutely no footage of him leaving. Like he went into the bar and just flat out dropped off the face of the earth. The last I knew, he's never been found and nobody knows what happened to him. ETA, Brian Schaffer, who went missing from Columbus, Ohio. Thanks, Reddit. Also ETA, since it keeps coming up, the bar was on a second floor at that time with only one public entrance/exit. The police extensively reviewed all the security camera footage. Brian and everyone else who was there that night was seen on camera entering the bar. Everyone, except for Brian, who was at the bar that night, was seen on camera leaving the bar. Which would nix any theories that he left wearing different clothes/disguised as someone else/mixed in with a crowd. Asher degree. What made that young girl leave home in the middle of a storm with a backpack? There's so many weird things about the case to me. She went missing on her parents' anniversary, she ran into the woods when approached, and likely left home in her pajamas. It feels like she left on her own. I just can't begin to imagine why. In the early 80s, all within 18 months of each other, 3 paperboys in the Des Moines, Iowa area all went missing during their morning route. The cases have never been solved. There are theories ranging from a pedophilia ring, an ex-employee who was a creeper kidnapping them, and even a lone wolf type situation. It's a bizarre case that has baffled Iowa for years. I had one of those early morning past routes and dang, I never thought about how dangerous the isolation at that time of the morning could have been. As a kid, I always kinda liked the peacefulness of being up and out on my bike that time of day. The disappearance of the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children are siblings who disappeared in 1966. There are still to this day investigations ongoing to try and find the remains of these children. There have been foundations of sheds and houses dug up. The children have never been found and the suspects has never been identified. Read The Satin Man by Alan Whitaker. Super compelling theory. I think he has it. Creepy neighbor guy who had a history of abuse and got off on the texture of satin. In the basement someone noticed a little girl's purse matching a purse belonging to one of the Beaumont children. I remember watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode about a person in 1977 who would send creepy anonymous letters to random folks in a small town. Actually threatening ones, too. The sender started by mailing up a woman and telling her, if I remember right, that they knew she was cheating on her husband with a superintendent, something she vehemently denied. Then they threatened her husband by saying he'd be in danger if he did not stop the affair. The couple decided to take it upon themselves to hunt the sender down. That ended with the husband dead in his crashed pickup truck. The sender kicked the wife while she was down by leaving threatening signs along her bus route, at least one of which had an actual booby trap on it. They found and arrested a suspect, but it's still unknown today if he's the actual sender. He denies it. The idea that somebody has been quietly studying your life just so they could begin to anonymously blackmail you, or make up a rumor to blackmail you with, is pretty damn scary. Addendum, in 2021, a forensics professional claimed that the police were right all along and the suspect who was released by then was the sender. But the massive hole in her claim is how he was still able to write letters during his time in prison. What happened to the Eileen Moore lighthouse keepers? Most likely they were swept out to sea by violent waves, but no storms were reported on the dates they went missing, and if there were, why would they leave the safety of their lighthouse? The Cleveland torso murderer. From 1935 to 1938, there was a serial killer who chopped off the heads and appendages of 12 to 20 people and left their torsos for people to find. The famous detective Elliot Ness was on the case, and the killer taunted him by leaving 2 torsos within full view of his office. The killer was never identified, nor were the majority of the victims. My grandpa wrote a book on this case. The killer will never be identified, and the victims especially. The victims seemed to be mostly homeless, prostitutes, etc. They weren't exactly traceable people. The killer was surgical. Like literally surgical in the cuts. Nobody will ever know who did it, but Elliot Ness was tortured with solving the case. Though, not as much as the victims were undoubtedly tortured, sadly. It'll remain an unsolved serial killer case. It's very interesting. In 1969, a student was killed in the stacks of the library at my old college, Penn State, and was found with a singular stab wound on her chest. It wasn't even late or anything, and while there were many suspects, no one was ever arrested for it. It's insane how someone could kill a person in broad daylight at a major university, and get away with it. It's not really anything super crazy in comparison to other stories here, it's just weird to me personally because I would always study there and I didn't find out about it until after I graduated. Several people even saw the killer leave, and one even tried to follow him, but couldn't keep up. The murder of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme. He was killed over 30 years ago, and no one have found the murder. In a similar vein, the disappearance of Australia Prime Minister Harold Holt. Except over here we tend to like bullying our politicians, so it's more treated as a joke than a tragedy. In my opinion, it's the city of San Francisco train derailment that occurred in Hardin, Nevada on the 8th of December 1939. The train, run by the Southern Pacific Railroad at the time, derailed at a bridge over the Humboldt River at a speed range of 60 to 90 miles per hour. The accident resulted in 24 fatalities and multiple injuries. Days later, investigators discovered tools at the bottom of the Humboldt River, determining that the wreck was caused by sabotage of the rails. The murder of Robert I is something I think about often. He was with friends, just staying the night, and what happened to him sounds brutal. Even more disturbing to me is the fact that everyone who was in that house that evening seemingly have a pact of silence and are walking around free as a bird. It's always this one for me. There's just something so dark about it. And it's so self-contained, where everything you need to know takes place in the house within a span of a few hours, and yet law enforcement has never been able to make a case. Any narrative you try to put together to explain all the details is just very disturbing. Alicia Navarro. She went missing, presumably after sneaking out to meet with a man she was talking to on Discord. It's creepy because of how real it is. As a naive girl who met up with guys I befriended online as a teenager, I just cannot stop thinking about how goddamn lucky I was. What creeps me out the most is that whoever she was talking to knew that cops would look on her phone/laptop and told Alicia to take them with her. Honestly, the Cape Intruder isn't disturbing, just weird as hell. During the night in Cape Maine in like 2005, people who kept their doors unlocked would wake up to find a man staring at them, and he would quickly flee. No people were ever injured and nothing was ever stolen. They just watched people sleep apparently. Jessica Chambers. She was set on fire in her car, and had gasoline poured down her throat. Paramedics found her walking down the lane on fire. The only part of her body that wasn't burned was the bottom of her feet. She did not survive. Police found a suspect but did not have enough evidence to charge him. Paramedics were so traumatized by what they saw, they had to go through therapy, and broke down on stage during interviews. She tried to name her attacker, but her throat was so destroyed, she couldn't be understood. The Ibadan Forest of Horror in Nigeria. A local taxi driver goes missing, and his friends create a makeshift search party and investigate a forest. Instead of finding their friend, they find an abandoned school, or factory, that have the remnants of a hellish torture/murder, ritual killing and human trafficking. 8 survivors were rescued. Numerous body parts, rotting corpses and personal artifacts were found. The perpetrators were never found, although local politicians and ritualists were suspects. Whilst this discovery is disturbing, the mystery for me is that the original taxi driver still hasn't been found. I am an avid unresolved mysteries reader, and I don't know why it has stuck with but Carly Goose. 16-year-old girl called her stepmother to pick her up from a party, reportedly was too scared to sleep because she thought someone would kill her, and the next day she disappeared. There was some weird interviews and dynamics between step-parents and birth parents, and a bunch of theories abound. I know it's basic, but Black Dahlia is that one case that gives me the creeps for everyone who doesn't know, which I think the majority knows of this case. Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, was found cut in half in Los Angeles, California in 1947, most of her blood was drained out of her body. The woman who found her body thought she was a mannequin, that's how pale she was. She was cut with surgical precision, no organs harmed. Her face was also cut from mouth to ears, making a permanent creepy smile on her face. No blood on the ground, so the body was defiantly moved to the place it was found at. After she was found, I think 9 to 10 days after, an envelope was sent to the examiner with cut and pasted letters saying something in the lines of "Here is Dahlia's belongings." The envelope contained Elizabeth's security card, birth certificate, photographs, etc., all cleaned with gasoline to remove fingerprints. I think in the March of the same year the murderer committed suicide, leaving a note confessing to the murder and saying stuff like, "I have waited for the police to come find me, I'm too much of a coward to come turn myself in. This is the best way out for me." His clothes were found and this note probably had fingerprints on it, yet no one could identify the killer, and the killer is still unidentified to this day. This case always brings me the chills because he has to be a trained professional to make those cuts, and he has to be so sick to even think about doing that. He said he killed himself, but can we be even sure? No body was found. The disappearance of Zeb Quinn. He was 18 years old when he went missing in 2000. Was working his shift at a local Walmart and afterwards wanted to look at a new car with a colleague, when he allegedly received a call that made him take off frantically. After that he was never seen again. The strangest thing is that a few days later his car was found in a parking lot, with the headlights turned on, a pair of lips and an exclamation mark drawn on the back window in pink lipstick, and a live Labrador puppy sitting inside. In 2017 the colleague was arrested for his murder, but all the strange details still make no sense at all. The Axeman of New Orleans guy was murdering people but wrote a letter that he wouldn't kill anyone who played jazz in their home. Never caught. But someone said that the police could have all hid in one house not playing jazz music and catch him that way. The West Mesa bone collector. The bones of dozens of women were found at a construction site, no other clues. The Setagaya family murder. Late on the night of December 30, 2000 in Setagaya, Tokyo, a man broke into the house of a family of 4, strangled the son in his bed, stabbed the father, and brutally killed the mother and daughter. The killer then spent hours in the house eating their food, using their toilet, and going through their paperwork like he owned the place, and eventually left, never to be found since. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson. It's a lengthy case so I won't summarize here, but he went missing while on the phone with his parents, his last known words being "oh shit" before the line went dead. Not a trace of him has ever been found. Yeah, this one sticks with me. I know it's most likely he fell into the river, but so odd they never found a body. Technically not unsolved since everyone can guess what happened to her, but it's one of the creepiest emo. Alyssa Turney was a teenager who disappeared in 2001. Her stepfather, Michael Turney, was obsessed with her. He stalked her at work, put cameras in the vents to spy on her, and made her sign contracts to say he never molested her. Michael picked her up from school early on May 17, 2001, and she's never been seen since. Her half-sister, Sarah Turney, has an amazing podcast called Voices for Justice which explains the case in detail, and because of her Michael Turney was arrested in August 2020. The death of Rebecca Zahau has stuck with me. Zahau's nude body was found hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and hands behind her back. Her death was ruled a suicide. As if that wasn't strange enough, 2 days prior to her death, the 6-year-old son of her boyfriend fell down a staircase and died. His death was ruled an accident. There's a lot to read about this case, and I highly recommend it if you're into true crime. I remember watching a documentary on this one. They focused so much on whether it would be possible to bind her wrists behind her back and not enough on who TF commits suicide like that.